Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe now to get the latest ancient history news and independent research from around the world. Over a month ago I presented my opinion on the history of the Great Pyramid based on everything I've learned, in what turned out to be a 90-minute presentation. I attempted to explain the structure in its entirety, my own opinion based on evidence, and well, I was quite pleased with the outcome. The video has now had around 110,000 views, which for me is great, but the response from viewers has been mixed as expected. The main negative view that people had is that Ancient Architects, once very much an alternative ancient history channel, has finally accepted the mainstream view that Khufu is the likely builder of the Great Pyramid. Towards the end of this video, I will run through the main evidence why it is likely built by Khufu, and I'll be including a new piece of material evidence I only came across this week, one that's been lost inside a dusty old book only available in the French language. Khufu was the likely builder, but many people still don't believe it, clinging onto an idea that maybe he just renovated it or enlarged it. But after doing the research, I now struggle to understand why so many people continue to cling to the idea that the Giza pyramids must predate the 4th dynasty, or dynastic history in general. Many have told me that the evidence in favour is circumstantial at best, or that it's fake, forgery, proves nothing, etc, etc.
etc.
A lot of the evidence may be circumstantial, but the thing is, we have lots of circumstantial evidence that Khufu was responsible for the Great Pyramid. And compare that with the evidence that it predates Khufu, which is basically nothing apart from a few anomalous radiocarbon dates in a much larger dataset. As stated in a recent video, the radiocarbon dating of ancient Egyptian monuments seems to be out of sync with the known timeline of ancient Egyptian history, maybe by a couple of hundred years. This same trend is seen at just about every monument that was built throughout the early dynasties. Therefore, far from being evidence for the Great Pyramid predating Khufu, the most likely explanation is that the whole of Old Kingdom history is actually wrong by about 200 to 300 years. There is a growing body of researchers who strongly believe the timeline needs to be revised, meaning Menkaure, Khafre, Khufu and Snefru, etc. all reigned and built pyramids, but 200 or so years before conventional Egyptology says. The radiocarbon dates, mainly from wood and charcoal, could also be indicative that they were old trees or reused wood, and that's the reason why dates seem to be out by a few hundred years, as the methods used by the scientists date the actual tree and not when the wood was cut to be used in a construction project. Either way, because of the multiple explanations on the table, and yes, one explanation could be that the Great Pyramid is in fact older, it isn't particularly good enough or strong enough evidence to refute the claim that Khufu built the Great Pyramid. Besides a handful of radiocarbon dates, there is literally no other evidence, not even circumstantial, that the Great Pyramid predates the 4th dynasty. No text or material finds, no second-hand accounts or anything. Over the past few years, I've read more and more about the Giza Plateau. I've read the field reports by people like Howard Weiss, Henry Salt and Selim Hassan, read various papers by archaeologists, climatologists, historians and geologists, viewed countless photographs and video footage, and I have to say, for me anyway, the more I learn, the less controversial and alternative my ideas have become. And that's just because much of the work has been done, and many alternative theories lack the research and evidence to underpin them. I have become more rational simply because of greater knowledge. That's all. And after questioning the age of the Great Pyramid and discovering there is no real evidence for a pre-Khufu date, I really do wonder why so many believe the Giza pyramids have a pre-dynastic origin, when there is no indication that these old farming communities were even capable of large building projects. To build pyramids the size of Khufu's and Khafre's and even Menkaure's, it requires strong centralised power and authority. Nobody can deny that. you need the ability to mobilise a huge amount of workers, to feed them, organise them, instruct them and monitor them, without letting your country fall into ruin in the process. Immense power was required, and all evidence indicates that no person had such power until the dynastic era. If you disagree, fair enough, but who are these elusive pre-dynastic powerhouses that built pyramids? These incredibly powerful kings who once mobilised tens of thousands of people to build pyramids, and then, miraculously, left no trace in the archaeological record. All I want to know is where is the evidence of their existence? Then you get a number of people saying the pyramids are pre-flood. Some researchers have even used ridiculous evidence that because there are sea creatures on the pyramid stone, it is evidence they were once submerged. The same people fail to mention the basic fact that the limestone used for pyramid construction is fossiliferous, and the sea creatures are millions of years old and very much part of the actual rocks. Some people even say that the fact there was salt inside the pyramids means it must be from an ocean, and is evidence the pyramids were once underwater or filled with water, like oceans is the only origin for salt. The fact is there is salt right across northern Africa and in the Sahara, and it is also a fact that none of it is because of an ocean. No ocean or sea has covered this region in the past few 100,000 years. Lakes and rivers yes, but not oceans and seas. A quick Google search explains why the Sahara Desert has been a source of salt for millennia. It's rock salt, either acquired from surface deposits caused by the desiccation process, such as is found in old lake beds, or extracted from relatively shallow mines where salt is naturally formed into slabs. This salt, which is creamy grey in colour, is far superior to sea salt, and it is also very different. They are evaporite deposits and are not oceanic in origin. It's there because northern Africa was once wetter, and salt is generally found in old lake basins simply due to evaporation. There is no evidence of any kind that oceans covered Egypt or northern Africa in human memory. Sea level was not substantially higher during an ice age, quite the opposite, and no tectonic event could have taken place without leaving considerable geological evidence. It's simply a fact that the pyramids were never underwater. As a rock type, limestone is porous and, once upon a time, salt-rich fluids penetrated the rocks. The salt crystallised as the rocks dried out. Therefore, salt is naturally occurring in limestone at Giza. Simply having a hunch that the pyramids predate the 4th dynasty kings really isn't good enough, and forming an opinion without basing it on any scientific, archaeological, and historical evidence is somewhat strange and worthless. It's like speculating the Eiffel Tower is a pre-flood relic simply because it displays rust, and also because there is no evidence of 1,000-foot cranes in the year 1888, whilst ignoring everything else. Furthermore, just because there is no writing inside the Great Pyramid is not supportive evidence against a Khufu origin or a Khufu tomb. Okay, maybe a bad example, but I would say that this is a gravestone because it's found in a graveyard surrounded by burials. But would many people really argue the point because, as we can see, there is no writing on it? Of course not. There was writing once upon a time, but it has simply weathered away. The Queen's Chamber and the Grand Gallery were once found with walls encrusted with thick salt, and obviously not sea salt, and the growth of which is very destructive and would have removed any painted or even thinly carved scenes and writings on the walls. Salt is even growing on bricks in my own cellar, causing some of them to crumble, and it's even destroying the paintwork on the bricks. Furthermore, back in the 1970s, there was evidence of ancient plaster on the walls of a number of passages and chambers in the Great Pyramid, plaster that was removed and cleaned up in pyramid renovations. For all we know, this plaster could have been painted or inscribed, and now the plaster is all gone. I have recently spoken to a man who saw fragments of plaster in the 1970s in situ, and he also has photographs which I've seen. All I would say to the people that cite the fact that there is no writing inside the pyramid, apart from the famous graffiti, and therefore it was not the tomb of Khufu, is that the pyramid has been open and the inside exposed since at least the Roman era. The growth of thick salt and the removal of plaster could have removed any ancient writing. Furthermore, if we actually bother to read the eyewitness accounts of the Great Pyramid by the Arab chronicler El-Idrisi in 1226 AD, he gives a detailed and credible account of the Great Pyramid's interior. And of the Queen's chamber he explains, and I quote, "On the roof of the room are writings in the most ancient characters of the heathen priests." So, it appears there were once hieroglyphs in the Great Pyramid. The problem is, we really only have detailed accounts, drawings and photos of the pyramid's interior from the past couple of hundred years. We know for a fact that the subterranean chamber was open since at least the Roman era, there was writing from this time found inside, and the rest of the pyramid has been open for at least 1200 years. And again, it could have been open much earlier. Religious groups could have also been behind the destruction of many ancient finds for religious reasons, atrocities that have even happened in the Middle East in recent years. Christianity destroyed much of what was written by the indigenous people of Central and South America, and we know that Islamic groups tried to take apart the Pyramid of Menkaure, hence the huge gash on its side. Roman Christians or even later Muslims could have removed any writings, discoveries and even mummies found inside the Great Pyramid. They could have scrubbed the painted walls, chipped away at any inscriptions, maybe to try and link these impressive structures to their own teachings and cultures. We simply don't know. Another Arab source states there was a body in the coffer in the Great Pyramid, and the most credible source, El-Idrisi, attests that there was a mummy inside the stone sarcophagus in the Pyramid of Menkaure. How the pyramids look and appear today is not the most credible way to define the age and purpose of these structures, especially if they have been open, looted and destroyed for many hundreds and hundreds of years before detailed records were even made. Many speculative videos and books on the Great Pyramid fail to mention or take into account a number of details, like El-Idrisi's documentation of hieroglyphs in the Queen's chamber, or a discovery that was made less than 100 years ago that links Khufu to the Great Pyramid, which I'll mention shortly. But even with all this information, many will still say that the Great Pyramid is a pre-dynastic structure, for reasons that are really unknown. They say Khufu and Khafre could not have been responsible for these pyramids, but unsurprisingly they never explain why. It's like there is some strange belief that Old Kingdom Egyptians were like cavemen, and they show little understanding of the evolution of the pre-dynastic and early dynastic architecture. But thanks to the archaeological record, we can see the development of pre-dynastic people. Throughout prehistory, we can see their gradual migration towards the Nile Valley as northern Africa dried out, and the gradual evolution of society in the Nile Valley. The main powerhouse in pre-dynastic times seems to be in southern Egypt, where the Naqada I, II and III cultures flourished. The pre-dynastic cultures of the north were less influential, but still managed to create trade links and build towns. They show an evolutionary progression from simple farming communities to the more influential settlement of the Buto-Madi culture, yet these people were still comparatively primitive next to the changes that took place in dynastic Egypt. I always read the same comment: the Old Kingdom Egyptians couldn't build the pyramids, and therefore they must be much older, which in itself is a bit of a random statement. If they could not build them in the Old Kingdom, then why isn't it more logical to say that the pyramids were built by the Greeks or the Romans? Evolutionary speaking, surely that makes more sense. And if the Khufu evidence is circumstantial and easily disputed, we know that the cult of Khufu continued up to the Roman era, so maybe the Great Pyramid is Roman. No, I don't think that at all, but there is actually more reason to think it's Roman than pre-dynastic. When I press the people that say the Great Pyramid must be pre-dynastic, I'm told that dynastic Egyptians did not have the technology to build the pyramids in the Old Kingdom. Well, for a start, that is debatable, as the pyramids, although well planned, geometrically aligned and encoding mathematics, they are mainly masses of limestone blocks with some granite. The technologies of Lower Egypt's pre-dynastic cultures were not better than those in dynastic history. By all accounts, they were worse. Then I'm told the technology is lost technology. But again, why does it have to be pre-4th dynasty lost technology? Why can't the lost technology, if it's really needed, simply be dynastic in origin? Because this is the only time when there was a strong central power to create such incredible structures. I can only think that the reason people say the pyramids predate the 4th dynasty is because so many people don't like the idea that pyramids are tombs. Like the tomb of a god king, the structure that guarantees his rebirth with the gods isn't a worthy project for an all-powerful ruling monarch. But why should that be the case? Another reason is because people are so invested in an idea that they can't be seen to backtrack, because maybe they've written a book or made a documentary or such work. Another reason is because the idea is more sensational and more appealing to a broad audience. It gets views and book sales. To create the Pyramid of Khufu, it requires extremely intelligent minds, detailed construction plans, but then really it's just instruction, manpower and inspection. Again, first and foremost, the ability to build the pyramid really requires strong central leadership, and this could only have happened when Egypt was a united country with a powerful king who was looked on as a god leading the nation. There is some circumstantial evidence that the Giza pyramids were enlarged, but no reason to speculate they are far more ancient structures. They could have been enlarged later than the Old Kingdom, or the enlargements could have been part of the original building process, the final stages of constructing a pyramid. Bedrock is incorporated into the Khufu and Khafre pyramids, and there is some larger masonry towards the base of the Khafre pyramid, but these cyclopean blocks could have been cut in situ. They are so large because A, that adds more stability to the structure, and B, they wouldn't have to travel very far at all. So, if after this video you still believe the Giza pyramids predate the 4th dynasty, all I'd like to ask you is why do you think this? What are you basing this opinion on? If it's because of the words of another researcher, well, what evidence are they basing it on? I am yet to see a single piece of strong evidence for the Great Pyramid being pre-4th dynasty in origin. So again, if you have some evidence, please do let me know. And now for the remainder of this video, I'll give you a brief overview of the evidence why the Great Pyramid was almost certainly built by order of King Khufu. You of course can agree or disagree, but if you disagree with the evidence in favour of a more sensational idea with no real supporting evidence, well, it's not really bringing you any closer to the truth. So here goes. Number 1. The quarries at Giza that experts believe were used for the stone to build the Great Pyramid contain the actual cartouches of Khufu inside them. Material excavated from between a pair of masonry walls in the base of the quarry behind the Sphinx contain mud seals bearing the name of Khufu. Number 2. Khufu's name and his image are found on fragments of broken friezes and statues all the way down the now lost causeway. These were excavated in the 20th century, are well documented and pictures exist in the public domain. Point 3. The Khufu cartouche graffiti that was found inside the relieving chambers of the Great Pyramid were painted onto the enormous granite blocks before they were laid down. Look at these diagrams showing the various locations of the cartouches, the orientation and way they were laid out. The writing is not all done by the same hand. Furthermore, Egyptologists as well as alternative researchers such as John Anthony West and Graham Hancock, who viewed the graffiti up close and in person, concluded that the graffiti was original and legit. In fact, John West even said on record, "Having been up there on numerous occasions, I am 100% convinced they are legitimate and reference Khufu." Arguments to the contrary are put forth by people who have not been up there and do not know what the hell they are talking about. In 1837, even specialists in ancient Egypt like Samuel Birch of the British Museum could not have faked these quarry marks. This is because they have features that even the experts of the day did not understand, but which have become known since. In fact, they fit in perfectly with later discoveries and later analyses. According to Martin Stower, the so-called misspellings and errors in the graffiti were actually imperfections in 19th century knowledge of hieroglyphs projected onto the correctly spelled hieroglyphs themselves. To say it's a forgery is really quite lazy. We are not simply talking about one cartouche, there are many. Point 4. I only came across this evidence this week. In 1935, King Farouk I of Egypt instructed George Goyon to make a record of all the graffiti on the outside of the Great Pyramid. And, in doing so, what so many people don't know is that he did find a Khufu inscription on the underside of a casing stone from the 4th tier of masonry on the Great Pyramid. This is detailed in his book shown on screen. So, we have Khufu's name on the inside and outside of the pyramid, the latter in stone. Point 5. Khufu's children, his mother, his queens, his brother, his vizier, his closest advisors, aides and servants are all laid to rest in mastabas, pyramids and burial shafts directly outside and surrounding the Great Pyramid. Burials of such important people of society would surely be encircling their leader, their king and god. Khufu would have had to have had a larger tomb than all of his family and officials, and the only larger structure in this region is the pyramid they encircle. It is therefore a logical deduction to assume that Khufu's tomb is the pyramid. Point 6. The New Kingdom Egyptians associated Khufu and Khafre with Giza. Amenhotep II, father of Thutmose IV who made the Dream Stealer, has his own stela inside his own Sphinx temple. On it is written, he yoked the horses in Memphis when he was still young, and stopped at the sanctuary of Horemakhet, aka the Sphinx. He spent a time there in going round it, looking at the beauty of the sanctuary of Khufu and Khafre the Revered. His heart longed to keep alive their names, and he put it in his heart. So, as far back as the New Kingdom, Giza was looked on as the sanctuary of Khufu and Khafre. Point 7. The 26th dynasty kings associated the Great Pyramid with Khufu, as shown on the inventory stela. Point 8. The Diary of Mera talks of large amounts of Chura limestone being taken to Akhet Khufu, which is the name of the Gizan necropolis in the 4th dynasty, a name that is also recorded in hieroglyphs on stonework from the Khufu Causeway. The fact that Akhet Khufu includes the pyramid hieroglyph does imply that the stone was being taken to build the Great Pyramid. Point 9. The grandfather of history, the Greek Herodotus, names Cheops, the Greek name for Khufu, as the builder of the Great Pyramid. And although this isn't a primary source, Herodotus is being proven right over and over again, even with brand new archaeological discoveries. Point number 10. Cartouches bearing the name of Khufu's son and successor Djedefre are found inside the boat pits of the Great Pyramid, and he would of course been the main person who oversaw the funeral of his father. So that's 10 valid pieces of evidence to draw upon, and yes, you could argue it's all circumstantial, but the evidence together makes the case somewhat compelling. Well, in my opinion. Again, if you believe the Great Pyramid predates Khufu, or the Second Pyramid predates Khafre, how can you form a valid argument? What evidence do you draw upon? For all the reading I've done, I'm yet to see anything, circumstantial or otherwise, to say the pyramids predate the 4th dynasty. I am always willing to change my mind if compelling evidence is presented. Only recently I said how a lot of evidence pointed to the Sphinx enclosure being dynastic in origin, until geologist Colin Reeder got in touch and sent me compelling evidence to the contrary, evidence that I found impossible to refute and led me to make a video to this effect. As I always say, I do have no bias, I'm just looking for the truth, but I only want to use research, evidence and logic. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.